dashboard numbers in there as well. So we'll share that end of year report with this committee first though, so you have first eyes on it.
You'll do it 6 months first, or you're just going to do your?
So we'll do the end of the year report. We'll have the data from last year.
Okay.
And then we'll give you a 6-month coming into with the new dashboard, and that'll be every 6 months. Unless you want it more often, we can certainly do that. Our numbers don't change too much, and so that's why we thought maybe a 6-month mark would be fine. But if you'd like to see numbers sooner, we can certainly do that as well. And then just the last thing, just doing midterm evaluations with staff. So if you have any feedback, please share. Hopefully it's all good, but certainly if you have thoughts about performance, that is something you can talk with me about. So, and Tom is on.
So that onto your AI that you were talking about earlier, it is on your UW Extension website. I looked it all up to the dates and times. I mean, so for the people out there that are going to watch the view, that they know it's out there, if they missed what you said, that they can look it all up on your extension.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that's what I have.
Questions for Kristen, Tom? Nothing? Nope. Anybody? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to written extension educator. Ryan, I guess you're up.
I guess I am. See if I can share here.
Sometimes I forget you're there, Tom, so if you got a question, just jump in and holler, I guess.
And I may need you to help me for a second here.
I'm sure you probably know. What do you need?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. Of course, you got to start off with a little technical difficulty to spice life up, right? So with that, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I picked a couple different things. There's a popcorn around, and then open it up for questions that you have. So it's been just over a year for me now in Area 6 and in a livestock role. So I think there's been a couple opportunities where Jerry and I have pulled up various ag statistics and presented to these groups. And so this is just a couple key numbers I pulled. As we get more information, we'll definitely share it with you. If you have questions, let us know so we can tailor what you're interested in. But the reason I still included this tonight, it happened to me again last week. I get farmers and ag business professionals that come up to us and say, does the public really understand what we do, or do they really know how important agriculture is? So that was a little bug in my ear of don't stop showing the stats yet, just kind of keep throwing a few reminders out there for these audiences. So we can look at the value of milk, livestock, and poultry sales in the 2022 ag census. That was just over $200 million in Dunn County. We can look at animal numbers if those questions come up. So we have just over 67,000 beef and dairy cows total. 25,000 of those are dairy. Counting the rest, it gets a little quirky in the numbers, but those are beef animals and some dairy animals that haven't calved yet. And then I threw the sheep number on there. It's 3,100, but the interesting thing with that is those 3,100 are spread across just as many dairy farms as we have small ruminant farms. Just the number of animals per farm is different depending on what species we're working with. And then just noting that it has been a year. The first year always, I think, looks a little bit different for educators as your learning needs, building relationships, just trying to, you don't get to everything, but you do want to get out and about. So the top left picture, we did some tabling at the Eau Claire County Dairy Breakfast. The center picture is one of my favorites. That was a pasture walk that Tina Barone came over and said, Ryan, you need to be here tonight. And it was a good night. But again, kind of getting out to see some of the things that she's doing and it's important her to be working on, as well as the manure applicator field day, which was more of an agronomic flavor. But again, most of those are dairy and beef producers. And so seeing who's there, reconnecting with some people, that's kind of what the first year looks like. I didn't get a picture of it, but I got to tag along with Margaret to the Bees, Trees, and Cheese event that they do over at Beaver Creek. Again, just kind of seeing some of the different things other educators and other groups are working on. So thinking about some of the first programming I've done and kind of how needs are looking kind of at the first glance in livestock, I get a lot of questions from what I would call beginning or transitioning farmers that might have dairy, might have crops, but are thinking about, is there something else I can add? Otherwise, it's boy, I really hate my corporate job. Can you help me make a living at farming? Which I have to burst a lot of people's bubbles. Jerry and Margaret do too, but we do want to assist them and provide some good education. So one of the first things was kind of this lack of hands-on skills. So we did both a calving and lambing school. Those are what those pictures are from, where there is definitely some classroom instruction, but then we do want to devote as much time as we can to doing some hands-on. So the American Sheep Industry Association owns the model on the right that's housed in Minnesota. So Kelly Freylake, you can see there, is the keeper of that. She has some grant dollars that I was able to, and known her from past lives, that we're able to reconnect again and bring that program to Dunn County. That was done actually in this room here. And then the calving program, that's in partnership. Marathon County owns that model there. So we're looking at a model where we collaborate with each other, do a spring and fall version, and move around to different locations between our respective counties. And then there's some of the additional things that we can do when I don't have access to those models. There's some supplies and checklists and whatnot that we can still do some education on. And that was one of the components that I tried to bring to that program as well. But just trying to combine both the technical, but also getting people more hands-on experience in those where getting access to those models is pretty cool and allows us to do some things that we couldn't previously do. The next need that's kind of emerging, especially this year, is hearing more about profitability. I hear from the livestock producers, yes, prices are higher, but also the cost of everything else is higher. My position doesn't focus as much on dairy anymore, but I still interact with dairy farmers, and we have seen some downturns in that milk price recently. So we're looking at this next year, definitely being tighter margins for our dairy producers. So that's something we want to be cognizant of going forward. So both it could put us under both profitability and the beginning transition producers, trying to build more skills and bring more education out on the cattle handling side of things. If you can't handle, you can't manage these animals, you can't do the good production practices like vaccinating and loading them out without bruising, so on and so forth. So that's getting worked into some other programs. We're planning a cattle feeding and management workshop. I'm not going to talk about the feeding part of it. We have other experts I can lean on for that. I'm going to focus more on the handling part and how we can bring that into some of the programming that we're doing. Also looking at doing some more one-on-one site visits to look at different people's setups. There's some experts I connect with of maybe if we arrange some things or lay things out differently, it might be a little bit easier working facility for you. Along those lines, we did a couple beef, cow, calf events in the past year, focused some on selecting animals, which is a role I brought to it, some forage testing, inventory. And this last one, December, it was December. So we did not do that on a farm. These pictures are from more of the September timeframe, but how do we manage that feeding the cow herd? Feed is 50% of your expenses for a lot of beef, cow, calf producers. So if we're going to talk about profitability, how are we going to address that through some of our winter feeding and management practices there? So one of the things that I found over my career, I don't want to speak for Jerry and Margaret, but we should commiserate sometime. In agriculture, you get pulled in a lot of the technicals a lot of the times. So when it comes time to give presentations like this, it's like, how do we translate that? How do we talk about this? So one of the emphasis going forward in the next year is like thinking a little bit more about the story, in addition to some of the technical things that we got to deal with on a daily basis. So just talking to some of the program participants, trying to get a little feedback. Why are you here today? These are some of the comments that was collecting last fall. So one was, my partner and I want to grow our herd. We both work off the farm. If we're going to make this go, I got to be able to do more of this. It can't be one or the other. We got to be more of a team on this. And that comes into some of that skills. This one was a fun one. Last year, my husband was going on a work trip. They had a difficult calving. The calf after that didn't want to nurse. And she was like, I never been taught what to do this. And then we delved into a little bit of marriage therapy of why was I never taught this? But it was a good learning experience in some of the things that we can work on going forward. More recent program focusing more on the forage use and how do we help farmers manage some of their expenses. So I visited a couple farms just for my own experience, getting farms I hadn't been to, grab some forage samples. So I kind of get a flavor of what things are testing like this year. When I shared that back with one of the farmers, his feedback to me was, I hadn't done a test before, or at least it's been several years. The results he gave back to me, they're actually better than what I expected. So that allows me to reevaluate how much supplement I'm feeding and reevaluate some of my expenses there. And this is one I tag team with Jerry on. We did some corn silage, dry down and quality things last fall. So the host was asked kind of, what did you think? How did the day go for you? And she thought this was helpful to the farmers that she worked with to make better informed decisions for the timing of their harvest. So with that, a few additional projects that have been happening recently. Since, January 8th, I believe, was the Western Wisconsin Ag Lenders Conference. Jerry and I, a lot of Jerry, worked together on this. That's a unique program because we work a little bit more with some of the ag businesses. And so that allowed us to build some connections. Both Teal Blazine and I tabled there. We got some references and have done some individual follow-up after that because of the connections we make at that conference. As we're kind of talking about numbers, I got about a third of the audience to report back to me, kind of how many people would you share information from this event with? And I got an answer all the way from 1 to 100, but it averaged out around 20, 24. It could be farmers, it could be coworkers, it could be their own board members. Just this past Saturday, I went to my first North Central Cattlemen's annual meeting, co-presented with my colleagues there on some of the beef production practices, pregnancy testing, and that animal selection again. Finished my last Badger Dairy Insight. That was a legacy of when I was a dairy educator, but that was a program I wanted to see through last fall and some kind of health stuff that we're going to be summarizing coming ahead. And then to wrap it up, just some of the future things to have on your radars. We have our School for Beginning Beef beginning on January 27th. We have a beef quality assurance in February. And again, that's where I'm trying to do a better job of describing what some of these titles are. So beef quality assurance, we talk about a lot of things, but again, for me, it's focusing more on how can I bring that cattle handling expertise along with the other things we talk about at a program like that. Eau Claire Farm Show, cattle feeding and management, we're planning for late March, bringing that calving school back in April, and then sheep and goat field day. I got a date. I still need to work out some logistics with the facility, but we're going to talk about some animal health and parasite management there, especially for animals on pasture. So I think that's one of the things when I started, Tom had asked me about was kind of how we can work more with some grazers, and I've been mulling that around. But that's definitely one where I can bring some expertise on the animal health side. How do we have better, more healthy animals as they're out on pasture? And then hitting home on that profitability. I'm still collaborating with a few of my dairy colleagues. We're going to do a cost reduction data farm collection with heifers coming up this spring. So thanks, and open up for questions.
As the cattle dairy kind of goes under, we lose more farmers every year. They look like switching over to beef then, or are they just kind of going under completely the dairy side of it, instead of the beef? And the price of beef, everybody probably wants to jump in, but it's too expensive to jump into right now, I would assume, right?
There's a lot of pencil pushing that has to happen. How about that? I had that conversation last week with a couple people. Yes, it's tough to get in at the high end of the cycle. So in terms of dairy exiting, it's some of both. Some still want to have animals. Some might have still feed on hand, so whether or not their plan is to have those beef animals for the short term or long term, I see both out there. Dairy farmers are beef producers too. We don't think about that, but when a dairy cow ends her career as a milk cow, she ends up as a beef cow at some point too. Like we kind of overlook that sometimes. So actually improving the quality of that product coming off the dairy farms is what helping a lot of dairy farms right now. That's where a bigger and bigger part of their check is coming from, the sale of calves and the sale of cow animals. So yes, I think stay tuned on what happens with dairy this year, but we're just seeing more market forces are putting downward pressure on that price. So at least 2026 is looking to be lower than this past year.
Supervisor Bjork,
Yeah,
hand him your,
I'm sitting right between two educators that, I'm sitting between two educators that I think the same way I do. And that is, how do we expose, let's say, youth to, agriculture? And, the newsletter discussion down here was real interesting, and I hope all those topics, all those locations for doing something, will that be in a newsletters like that?
Yeah, so the goal for the first newsletter is to just expose what Extension does and who we are. The following newsletters will have upcoming programs so that people can register for those, as well as here's a program, what we've done in the past, and this is why we did it.
Okay, well, I don't know how this timeline works out, but, uh, nothing more discouraging as an educator when you put in all the work and then, there aren't many people standing around and listen to what you have to tell them. And I'm thinking in ways in which we bring kids together to learn about agriculture. And I think you'd be surprised at how many new kids and young adults and couples that want to get into agriculture a little bit would find the weigh-in for the livestocks at the coming up here, and when we have our weigh-ins in March.
February 4th.
Okay, see, there you go. But I mean, Ed Cody was a really good beef leader in the county and probably exposed the finer points of fitting an animal to do well in big shows more than probably anybody else in Dunn County, or there's others too. But I'm kind of thinking if we promoted the beef, sheep, and swine weigh-in as a time to come together and not only just weigh these animals, but let's pull an exhibitor or two out or their animals and go through, okay, this is a sheep, she's due to have a lamb. When she does lamb, we think she should be in a size, this particular size, away from the other sheep. She should be wormed. She should have her tail docked, castrated if they're little ram lambs, and things like that. Pass along some of that information when you've got people interested in agriculture there already. Let's do some teaching. And this might be a little far-fetched, but I'm famous for that. I've been around livestock forever, and I don't know what the size of a steer that's going to win at the county fair, how much they ought to be weighing at weigh-in time. I don't know if you ought to be having a 700-pound steer that you start on that feeding program, or a 600 or 800. I suppose it kind of depends on what you want it to finish at. But if we would have the opportunity to bring out 4 or 5 steers that at different weights, and then evaluate them and have the kids say, well, you know, I think that black and white one or that one with the fluffy ears. I heard a little girl on the radio from FFA in Alma Center on Saturday morning, and they was asking her what she liked, which project she likes best, and she says, "I like my beef calves the best because they're clean and fuzzy." Now, I never heard the term fuzzy, but I've seen it 1,000 times, and that's working with those cattle. So when we have a weigh-in, if we could have some steers that the kids could say, I think this steer is going to finish right. This one's going to do okay. I don't know. It's just getting kids involved in the start of the project from when they weigh in to seeing how their opinion, what they might learn from how that animal finishes at the fair. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And because I don't think it's all fitting. Fitting's a big part of it. We've got fitting demonstrations all the time, right? I mean, you teach kids are taught how to clip, kids are taught how to lead, that kids are taught how to present their animal to the fair. But kids aren't taught on when I go to buy a steer or pick one out from dad's farm, what I ought to be looking for. I can't tell you, and I should. So I think this newsletter is going to be a great thing, and let's just keep pumping that information out there. Those kids, and you know, sometimes they are like a big old crappie, and they'll take it and run. And we want them to, and we hook them in to be part of our programming. Maybe that's a little too.
Thanks, Larry. You got any?
I mean to hook them in. Okay, so yeah, newsletter is a great idea. Let's incorporate ag stuff in for kids to learn, you know. Or maybe you could teach my wife what to do with her 2 pregnant sheep, and she's asking me these questions, and I say, I don't have a clue, sweetheart. You know, she wanted sheep for herding dogs, to train her dogs for herding. Well, she's also going to be a lambing mother coming up here soon. Oh. And Zach's got to teach me to teach her what to do.
Any further
you.
questions for Ryan? Seeing none, I guess we'll move on then. Thanks, Larry. Okay. Items placed at the request of the chair, economic development update. Adam?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Just get my presentation here set up. So this is the same presentation that I gave to the Greater Menominee Development Corporation today with just a couple of additions for this committee. So with it being a holiday month, it was a little bit slower in December, but we still had quite a bit going on. I believe that I spoke about our Development Friendly Municipalities program the last time that I was with the committee. This is the program to provide more direct hands-on technical assistance to our smaller municipalities. And we are starting to see quite a bit of traction with this. The Village of Wheeler actually completed their housing vision workshop last week. So we sat down and did a visioning session with the village board to talk about the parcels that they've identified as potential to be sold, and kind of talked about what they would like to see in those parcels as far as the specific types of housing, things that they wanted, and also just as important, things that they didn't want. If it doesn't fit the vision of the community, it's not something that we're going to try to push through, because ultimately economic development is up to the governing bodies and the citizens of the communities that we are trying to work with. So next step with the Village of Wheeler, we'll be working with them on mapping out their process, the people that you need to talk to, the cadence of meetings that you need to attend, the forms that you need to fill out, any processes that people need to be aware of that may be different from municipality to municipality, to make sure that we have a clear and predictable path to shovels in the ground to get housing built in Dunn County. We will be with the town of Menominee on Wednesday night and also have meetings scheduled with the village of Boyceville and the town of Hay River. Also in the housing front, our Greater Menominee Development Corporation revolving loan fund is officially active. So this is something that I've kind of been teasing for a little while, but we are officially active with this. We have a strategic focus with this fund to encourage economic development with strict priorities on housing and childcare projects. So this can be anything from a standalone childcare center to a housing development to the revitalization of upper floor housing in our downtowns across the county. Greater Menominee Development Corporation was kind of originally founded as a Menominee-centric organization, but with the new Dunn Economic Development Partnership, they have said that it doesn't really make sense to restrict our activities exclusively to Menominee. And so this fund is eligible across Dunn County and available to for-profit and nonprofit entities. So if the county was a partner on a housing project, the county could apply for this pool of funds. If a nonprofit organization or if a for-profit organization, any of those entities are eligible to apply for this pool of funds. Amounts of the loans range from $10,000 to $50,000 at a fixed interest rate. Right now, we're fixing it at 4%, so lower than bank financing. But we will evaluate this on an annual basis, but I don't anticipate it changing all too much unless there's something catastrophic that happens with the markets. And up to 10-year terms on these loans. So for our housing goals, this is for the creation of new housing stock as well as residential rehabilitation on our main streets. And for childcare, we're looking to support expansions, improvements, and physical builds of childcare centers. Eligible uses for these funds are for the acquisition of real estate, renovation of existing properties, leasehold improvements, and equipment. So capital purchases. Working capital is not an approved expense for this particular loan fund. So if somebody just needs capital to keep the business operational, we might have bigger problems than this loan fund can support. And so we want to resource them with other things that might exist in the area to help them from losing money and potentially closing. So that would fall more into business retention and expansion than into housing in this case. So right now, our website is under development and about to be launched here in the next month. But if there are any housing projects that you're hearing about, housing developments, this is not for single family or kind of residential rehabilitation of a single home, but this is for development of more than one home, multifamily housing, things like that. If you hear of any projects that may be eligible, feel free to send them my way, and I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody that might be involved in a housing and or childcare project and see if they would be an eligible borrower from this fund. This does work in tandem with Regional Business Fund, and the Regional Business Fund is actually administering this loan for the Greater Menominee Development Corporation. So we're working closely with them on a contract basis for the administration and vetting of these particular loan applications. On the business retention and expansion front, I have gotten in now with Timber Tech up in Colfax. They are one of Colfax's kind of success stories through the use of tax increment financing to help support their original build. The owners came in and invested pretty much all of the money that they had into this business to the tune of about $350,000 and turned around a couple of years ago and actually sold it to a private investor for the tune of about $22 million. So it was a really great project for Colfax. They're looking to do some expansion projects up there and looking to continue to bolster that operation. And so connecting them with the railroad was kind of their main request. And so working through channels with Wisconsin DOT as well as advocacy organizations in the area, we were able to secure that connection and hopefully provide them a little bit more clarity moving forward with the project that they would like to work on. Ole over in Boyceville has also been a bit of a difficult nut to crack. They are a German-owned company that is part of a British conglomerate. So it's an interesting organizational structure that does not completely reside within the U.S. And so I was able to break in through a project manager that I was introduced to, and he got me into management. So setting up a meeting with them to better understand the Boyceville operations and really make sure that they're getting what they need to grow and expand the business here in Dunn County and figure out any future plans that they may have here in the region. On the small business front, we were able to support 27 businesses with the first round of our small business development grant. 14 of those businesses were in Menominee, and the other 13 were throughout the rest of Dunn County. So as far as a geographic spread, I was very happy with about 50% being in Menominee and 50% being outside of Menominee. We had approximately $114,300 that was requested in this first round and granted to those businesses. The next round will be opening up in March. So we've got 2 more rounds planned, one for March and one for September of this year. Before those funds are out, there's about $132,000 left. The biggest bucket that we have is for our startup businesses. So businesses that are just getting going or are less than 2 years in operation. We have more money set aside for them to encourage that startup activity. I do anticipate this round, our existing business pot of funds is going to be competitive, and our startup funds will remain non-competitive. Moving into the fall round, I'm planning to kind of look at the funds that we have available and reallocate them as we did in the original, allocating 2/3 of the remaining funds to our startups and another 1/3 of them to existing businesses so that we can continue to capitalize projects across the county. I'm also going to work on an adjustment to the rental grant. The rental grant was an additional $2,000 for any startup business that had a physical location. And there have been a couple that just haven't quite fit the mold of needing to rent. Some of our startups like Vino Cappuccino own their building. They purchased it outright. And so this grant kind of penalizes them for that. And that's not the intention. They should be able to make physical upgrades to the space if they have a physical space. And so looking at adjusting some of that. UW Stout also took the lead on a regional grant called the Ignite grant through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. And we were able to receive a small pot of money, but it will allow Dunn County to have our first startup pitch competition here this year. So we will have cash prizes for entrepreneurs that come to pitch their ideas and start businesses here in Dunn County. On the business attraction front, again, a pretty slow month with the holidays in the middle, but we did receive and respond to a single request for information for a manufacturing facility, plus other just general phone inquiries for smaller projects, property managers and developers that are looking to find out what's going on in Menominee and throughout the county for various projects and clients that they have. So again, these are still very high-level conversations at this point, and oftentimes the requests for information that we send out, they go out into the ether and we don't hear back on them. But then once we hear back, we start getting more of those details, ironing out the feasibility of them moving here to Menominee or to another community in Dunn County, and then determining whether or not it's the correct fit for us. So these are not by any means done deals. These are not our Amazons that are building currently. This is very speculative and still a long ways off from even hearing back for something like a site visit on these. We also have what I would consider kind of an underutilized tool here in Menominee with an opportunity zone. So opportunity zones are qualified census tracts that fall within certain parameters of demographics, specifically when it comes to poverty rates, is how they kind of measure these opportunity zones. And we have a large one that sits from Broadway Street, coming across the university, stretching south past Tanglewood, and out east to about the border of the city at the sand plant there. It's a little bit to the west of that border of the city. But this whole area has specific investment funds that can make investments in qualified opportunity zones. And talking with one of my counterparts in a surrounding county, they shared that this is actually how they are targeting specific businesses to come into their industrial park, is targeting these investment funds for opportunity zones. And so seeing as it covers a lot of our Stout Technology Park, as well as a lot of our residential area for some housing, exploring what some of these investment funds may be able to bring to Menominee, I think is something that we've kind of been overlooking in the past. This was codified in the OBA bill on July 4th this past year from the federal government, and it also created Opportunity Zones 2.0, so the second version of this program, which is kind of at this point amorphous, but open for applications until the middle of the year. So we apply to the governor for a qualified census tract that meets the parameters of the program, and the governor then petitions the federal government for these opportunity zones in our area. So I'll be working with the city of Menominee specifically to kind of look at what some opportunities might be, but I'll also be reaching out to other communities if there are good opportunities to involve them in this Opportunity Zone 2.0 program. I did want to present our kind of fundraising strategy because this committee does generously fund the Dunn Economic Development Partnership, and I want you to be aware that we're working on some of our ability to be more fiscally responsible and do more projects with the capital that we have. So one of the things that we are introducing is a new premium investor level to our investment. In the past, we've kind of capped our investment at that $1,000, which compared to our surrounding counties may leave some capital on the table for our large corporations, our energy companies, our financial institutions that typically are able to and want to contribute more to economic development. So we're adding that additional premium investor level. And then our municipalities also haven't fit nicely in one of these buckets. They've kind of fit within the civic bucket, but some communities contribute more to the economic development partnership. So we want to standardize that. And so right now we're looking at standardizing it based on either equalized value at 20 per mil or per capita at 150 per resident. This number one sets a really attainable level of support for our smaller communities, as well as incentivizes us to work with them to help them grow, to increase that investment. So kind of a win-win for both, where it sets it low to begin with, but as they grow, that investment also continues to grow alongside it. A couple of upcoming events. Tonight, actually, at Brewery Nonick, right after this meeting, is Muskie Tank. Muskie Tank is an Eau Claire-based collective that does events throughout our region, primarily focused on networking and scalable startup businesses. Tonight's topic will be tariffs in 2025, how they affected businesses, and what we can expect looking into 2026. These move around the region, so they typically do one in Eau Claire, one in Menominee, one in Chippewa Falls, and then one over in St. Croix County. They did it in River Falls last year at the Innovation Center. Over the next couple of months here, there are going to be several legislative sessions. I'll be down in Madison tomorrow on behalf of the Wisconsin Economic Development Association. We're also going down next Thursday, or 2 Thursdays from now, as a part of the St. Croix Valley Legislative Days. As well as on February 19th, I'll be down for the Chippewa Valley Rally. There is also an industrial site selection event on Tuesday, February 17th. This was rescheduled from a December date that got snowed out. And so this will be at the Energy Education Center in Eau Claire and hosted by Site Selection Group. It'll be talking about the nuts and bolts of that site selection process. So what I shared before on the business attraction slide and kind of those caveats that I put on the numbers that I was presenting, all of those things will be dove into in pretty granular detail in that particular session with the site selection group. A couple of other things that may be of interest to this committee is the Wisconsin Rural Partners Annual Summit. I serve on the board of the Wisconsin Rural Partners. They focus specifically on rural areas and economic development projects that have impact on small communities throughout the state. We host our annual summit every year in a small community, and this year we'll be down in Prairie du Chien, as well as 4 annual summits that kind of hit the 4 quadrants of the state. The one that I attended this year was in Weyerhaeuser up in Rusk County. They target rural issues, target rural projects, and really show how the economic development projects that happen in rural municipalities are attainable and can be replicated in other parts of the state. Also, the Wisconsin Economic Development Association annually teaches their Wisconsin Economic Development Basics course. in early June. This one, I believe it's either in Sheboygan or there's another community in southern Wisconsin that it may be in, but it's in southeastern Wisconsin this year. This is a 3-day deep dive into economic development concepts, everything from structuring financing to running an economic development organization to understanding arts and tourism in economic development to ethics in economic development. And so you really dive into the basics of what economic development is. The course is about $1,000, but they do have scholarships that can cover up to 90% of the cost, bringing it down to about $100 plus your travel and lodging. So if anyone is interested in more information on that, I'm happy to provide that if you would like it. All right, that's all that I have for today. Any questions at all?
Supervisor Bjork?
Thank you. Adam, you amaze me every time at how many bases you get covered. Congratulations. Congratulations for us for having you. I had lunch today downtown Menominee at Ted's, and of course you look across the street from Anch's Jewelers and there's a hole in the ground. Um, all the projects that you were talking about included business hardware and even housing. Just on a rough thing, who buys that piece of property? What kind of economic development tools are available for them to make that a going place?
Yes. Short, vague answer, I'm working on it. Longer, more complex answer. Right now, we have 3 different property owners on the affected properties. So we've got the hole in the ground with one owner. We have that center property that was actually just recently purchased by Lumberjack's Bakery, and they plan to open later this year. And then we have the gin mill building that is also owned by a third person. So we had, three different buildings, 3 different owners. It's my understanding that the hole in the ground and the gin mill property are asking quite high prices for what they are. And so that's been a little bit of a difficult sell for those that have been interested in the purchase of those properties. And it makes it a little bit difficult to do a full redevelopment project. Back in November, I believe it was either October or November, the city council did consider purchasing all 3 of those properties. They convened in closed session to discuss, and ultimately it was voted that they were not going to pursue the purchase of those properties. Should a single purchaser come in and buy them, it would be a really great redevelopment project that there would definitely be funds for. Community development investment grants through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, some potential community development block grants, brownfield grants, several grant programs, as well as revolving loan fund programs, if we were to be able to do a full 3-parcel development project. At this point, I do know that the center property has been purchased by Lumberjacks. Gin Mill has been having conversations about that purchase, and I know that several people have made offers on the former Town and Country building, and a lot of those have been rejected based on the fact that they're offering what the property has been assessed at, as opposed to what they're wanting to get from the property. So it's a bit of a complicated situation dealing with 3 different owners, but I'm hoping that we can come to a good kind of consensus to build something that works well for downtown.
So with all those properties, you would also have living spaces above them, right? Or
You
so I
definitely
mean
could.
that drops you into having cash flow that might not come from the first floor, but it's definitely going to come from upstairs. So the hole in the ground would be new development for housing. Are there funds available to rebuild the other ones? I mean, if I was a student at Stout or a professor or anybody, wouldn't that be kind of
handy?
It really would be. The properties next to the former Town and Country building don't have that upper story housing. They
they
were
don't.
just the single level.
Oh, okay.
It's the old Opera House, and when that burned and it was rebuilt, they went with just the single story retail on the bottom. But you're kind of getting at exactly what would make a project like that worthwhile is stacking some residential on top of it, where typically when developers look at that type of project, they're looking at how to make it pencil based on the residential that sits above the retail, and the retail is gravy. And so if we're able to work some sort of a deal to get lumberjacks in the center, to get something nice next to them to the, what is that, to the west, and then to fill that hole in the ground and maybe put something on that corner and then build residential on top, that would kind of be the ideal situation.
I think it's a great opportunity to have 3 sites there for crying out loud. I mean,
Mhm.
especially if you got in there and developed residential on all 3 of them and have it, up to code and safe and
Yes. It would
Yeah.
definitely, I think it would be a benefit to downtown. It would be a benefit to the county as a whole, and it would create some much needed housing in that area.
because I remember my college days not having to drive somewhere was a kind of be a good thing
Yeah. Hmm.
from downtown on Friday night.
Yeah.
Oh, starting on Thursday.
Questions? Yeah, Supervisor Burnt.
Thank you. So it would be my understanding with the this aforementioned hole in the ground, that property would also require abatement from, um, I guess all the sand that's in it, but then also the whatever fire department used to put out that fire. Should that incur even more costs beyond, to the buyer beyond the actual purchase of the property? Are there any resources that they might be able to take advantage of?
The one would be the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation's brownfield grant. So there is a known past use of a dry cleaner in that facility, and typically dry cleaning ends up with some sort of a contamination aspect to it. And so if there was contamination found, a brownfield grant could be used to help with some of that mitigation and control of the contamination. We could also look at doing a brownfield tax increment district just on that one parcel. So brownfield tax increment districts are kind of a unique tool where it takes all of the abatement that we've done as far as the demolition, any of the brownfield remediation, and instead of taking that and sinking the property's value into the hole, it sets it at 0. And so it doesn't count against the property owner to have that abatement and that demolition done on it. It sets it at 0 so that when the community starts to build on top of it, the value automatically just starts to increase. And so it's a very unique type of tax increment district that we could consider, and it's only available like parcel by parcel. You can't put a whole brownfield around the downtown and say it's all contaminated. It has to be for very specific targeted uses.
Thank you. Any further questions? Very good report. This interesting.
Thanks, everybody.
Dunn County Communications.
It's always difficult to follow Adam. So as far as communications go, since the last meeting, we have had a number of press releases kind of going back to November following adoption of the 2026 budget. There was a press release done on that. We also, at the end of December, had released kind of a story about a program that the jail residents participated in making blankets for a local nonprofit. That one actually received some local news sharing. So you just never know what's going to take off. But that was a pretty successful release. With the election coming up. We did just do a recent release on election information pertaining to county board candidates for spring. Releasing probably any day now will be a feature on the treatment court program, which is currently part of our criminal justice collaboration division, and the kind of the outcomes that they've had as a result of that in the last year. And our digital media and communications specialist, Krista, also put together a social media survey that she's looking for responses on. So far, probably about 50 responses. So if you or any of your constituents have feedback about what they want to see on social media, what they want to see more of, or what they haven't seen, please direct them that way. It's on our Facebook page. Coming up, we are looking to put together kind of another feature video on snow plowing. It has come up even last year, kind of the amount of learning and coordination that goes into that, the amount of buttons and levers and things that are associated with operating a plow truck, especially when it's snowing and you can barely see, we think would be kind of fascinating, or at least I think it'd be fascinating to see. And just a little fun fact, in the month of December, the county plow trucks were out 22 days out of the month. So it was a very busy month, and we just think kind of like an appreciation post and educational post would be good. And we will also be doing a release very soon on our new chief financial officer. Actually, today was her very first day. Her name is Brittany Andrews. And from there, that's what we have on the horizon. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Monica.
On the subject of snowplows, I think a lot of people might appreciate it if there were notifications of when plowing operations might be done. Just saying, hey, tonight we're going to be doing a full snowplow, whatever, at this time.
Okay, yeah. Can make note of that for the highway commissioner.
Any other questions for Jenna? Seeing none, I guess we'll move on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Consideration of action to be taken by the Community Resources and Tourism Committee. I see none. Resolutions, the ordinances, the county board from the Community Resources and Tourism. See none. So number 9 is next meeting, February 17th, 4:30, right here in this room. Any further questions, comments? Meeting adjourned.